Be here once again, and let's ride. So Kenya has been having a problem, a little problem. This is 2000 and actually before 2023. Kenya was operating on an open tendering system for oil marketing companies to bring in fuel, and they would buy it from, or they would bring it to Kenya, and they would receive money from the government. Every month the government was scheduling about $500 million. To pay these oil marketing companies, or these companies that will bring oil from wherever they will bring it, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and all those places. Now, come 2023, of course, Kenya had a problem. With the exit of President Uhuru Kenyatta, we all know that left us staring into the abyss of debt crisis. And the country had to make particular adjustments. We all remember that with the coming of President Ruto, I'm going to look at this purely from an analytical position.
Okay.
Because Odoyo is here to hold brief for the government substantively. And of course, and Joachim is here to hold brief for Mr. Wanjigi, who has since come from the bunker.
You don't look at me like that.
No, but you're Wanjigi's chef. So you hold brief
Chef?
for him. Yes, Wanjigi's chef.
Whatever that means.
So,
We need, Odhiambo has always really encouraged decorum on this podcast.
Yeah.
And it looks like you're losing decorum today. I don't know.
yeah,
You know,
Joachim, I don't know why you are...
a man,
thirsty.
this guy is his own man, a man of repute.
But I mean, it's a good anyway.
Yeah.
That's beside the point. He's only brief for the
It's a
opposition.
brilliant soul who thinks
So-
on his feet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I'll be looking at it from an analytical perspective. So the answering of the main questions of the government will be done by Mheshimiwa Odoyo. Now, that said, in 2023, when the president came to power, his regime was very focused on one thing, which all of us agree on: austerity measures. And one of the things that he was against was subsidized consumption. You'd rather have subsidized production instead of subsidized consumption. And President Uhuru and the whole of his regime, actually the whole of the 10 years, was heavily reliant, especially his second half, was heavily reliant on subsidies. And when the president came in, he had to refigure these things because the country, depending on dollar reserves to pay, because you know when you buy fuel, you buy it on petrodollar. I think I've discussed this with you on the Anglo-leasing matter.
Yes.
You must have dollar reserves that then make it easier for you to buy this fuel from abroad, and that's specifically Middle East. So of course our dollar reserves zilikuwa zimeenda chini kabisa, that the country did not have proper dollar reserves that could last us a long period to enable us buy export, to enable us buy imported stuff like fuel, which is very essential. And remember, around that time, we had this issue of people lining up at fuel stations across the country, and you'd find banana country kind of, where you go to this fuel station, you don't find fuel, and they would sell it at particular prices. Then there's a gentleman, very brilliant gentleman, who is very good in policy. His name is Kiptoo. Kiptoo was a rugby player for a long time, but a brilliant lawyer in terms of petroleum policy. And he helped the government, especially President Ruto's regime, to come up with a brilliant G2G arrangement where the government will then provide sovereign guarantees in terms of oil purchase and standardization of pricing to ensure that the market was stable. Now, under G2G, perhaps the biggest thing that the audience needs to understand is that the government was not particularly buying the fuel. The government was providing a sovereign guarantee, which means in the instance anything goes wrong, the country takes responsibility for it.
But then who buys the fuel?
So that's what I'm coming to.
Okay.
So the government took that position to, first of all, ensure that we did not deplete our dollar reserve so that we could have good on consignment. Now, goods on consignment works in this way. You are given goods, like the fuel, and you are told, or you agree, that we have a period of payment. And in the instance of G2G, it is 180 days. Where from the time the fuel has been imported to the time the first payment is made, it is after 180 days, which means there are banks which will give letters of, I think they call letters of service or something, where a supplier of oil from Aramco in Saudi Arabia that deals with the diesel majorly, upon importing or upon exporting the oil from Saudi into Kenya, they would receive letter of assurance or letter of service from the bank, the local banks, that we will collect this money. We'll collect this money from the oil marketing companies. Now, those are the Oryx, Those are the, you name them, the Gulf Energy, etc. There are 3 companies majorly that were appointed by this G2G kind of arrangement. That after 180 days, at the elapse of the 180th day, then we release the money to you in dollars. So we collect it in shillings, then release it in dollars. Now, that one was a policy reinforcement to ensure the stability of oil or stability of fuel in Kenya. The government then went into a deal with these specific 3 companies, and I would name them. One was what I've called Aramco Trading, or Aramco Fuel. Let me just get it very quickly. Now, Aramco, as I've said, is a Saudi company that deals majorly in what? In diesel. Then we had 2 from UAE. I'm just going back to my notes so that I don't mislead the audience. Yeah. So we had Saudi Aramco, then we have Abu Dhabi National Oil Company, which supplies super petrol. Then we had Emirates National Oil Company, ENOC, which supplies super petrol and dual purpose kerosene and jet fuel. Kerosene and jet fuel is, of course, used for the airplanes. A few days ago, I think we did discuss with you here how even Kenya Airways has gone into hedging of fuel, so that they have assurances in terms of prices, so that fluctuation does not affect their profits or their operations. So that said, G2G was brilliant, and still is a very brilliant thing. It assures Kenyans of fuel stability in terms of pricing and in terms of supply. It also assures oil marketing companies in Kenya, because most of them are actually registered in Kenya, that they can trade with surety from the what? From the government, which is what any government needs to do. Now, that done, the government determines every 14th of the month the price of fuel, including kerosene, including petrol, super petrol, and including diesel. Now, later on, we have something happening which is interesting. America and Israel decide to do what they want to do under the guise of Iran holding weapons of mass destruction, specifically.
Epic Fury.
Yeah, Epic Fury and Rising Lion, or Roaring Lion, I don't know which one it is. And they hit this company, or this country very hard, this Iran country very, very hard. And Iran then goes for the asymmetric war that I love talking about, where they become a nuisance and an irritant in the equation. Majorly increasing the economic pressure, because they can't fight militarily against America. So the only way is to force America to come back to the table because of oil prices, and oil affects the whole world. Now, with that, we have some brilliant people in government who then see the opportunity. Of course, they're sharks. Now, when they see the opportunity, they dive deep into it. So they cook figures. And here comes in one critical gentleman called Joe Sang, who in around 2020 or thereabout, 2018, was involved in another scandal and was charged, only for him later on to be released by the courts, that there was no appropriate or evidence against him on the question of the deal that they did, which went really south. In my suspicion and analysis, because I can only use empirical data to show us where we are going, you cannot rely on what has happened. I believe strongly that Joe Sang, who is now deposed, was the architect behind all this thing. Then he ropes in the accounting officer of the department or of the ministry, who is the PS Petroleum, Bonalibam Mohammed, who is a distinguished administrator in terms of governance. He has never been in the fuel business before. He's a gentleman who was heading, I think, at the River Development something. Then later on, of course, appointed to be a PS and taken to petroleum. Then he ropes in EPRA, the gentleman who understands the infrastructure, the legal infrastructure of G2G. So if you understand the legal infrastructure of G2G, it also means you understand the loopholes